So as you know, I had the pleasure of interviewing, your friend and colleague, Dr. John Andrew Morrow, the other day, and he explained how you inspired and conceived the Covenants initiative. And I wanted you to talk to me about, the entire project and what, most importantly, actually led you to that journey.
Well, what led me to that journey, and it certainly is a journey. I have a publisher who once in a while sends me manuscripts that have been submitted to him asking if I think they're worth publishing. And so when I saw Dr. Morrow's The Covenants of the Prophet Muhammad with the Christians of the World, I said, you've got to publish this. This is one of the most relevant books that I can possibly imagine for this time. And so he went ahead and did it. And but in the process of talking to Dr. Morrow, because I'm sort of a on and off colleague of my publisher in his efforts, So I did some editing, quite a bit of editing on that book. And in talking to Dr. Morrow, I said, well, look, if you want to go with us as a publisher, we cannot give you a big budget for advertisement because we're a small press, or getting this middle-sized press, but we don't have a budget for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we can make a movement out of it. I mean, it just occurred to me that's the way to advertise the book, is to make it a movement, because it was so striking to me that such a thing should appear. And so that led me to conceiving of the Covenants Initiative and composing a little declaration where Muslims would have a chance to subscribe to the idea that these covenants are legally binding upon them today, and as an outreach to Christians who are being persecuted in the world as well. So that's how that happened. It was inspired by Dr. Morrow's book, put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That actually leads me to my next question, because, as you know, very sadly, we live in a very violent world. And I think that over the past, I would say, decade, racism and sectarianism have really taken over. And that is something for me that I find very difficult to understand, because, whether, it doesn't matter where we are, we all aspire and inspire to the same thing, which is essentially live in peace. And yet, war, we have been defined by war, and war is almost all we know. So I'd like to understand, for you, from a spiritual point of view, how do you explain this divorce that we see in between what the world, what we want the world to be, and how we have made the world out to be?
Well, that's a large question, but, you say everyone wants peace, but some people, it depends on how they conceive of peace. Some people conceive of peace as triumphing over their enemy, and then they will have peace, or as triumphing over the present difficulty in their lives, and gaining mastery, and then they will have peace. So our conception of peace is not necessarily very exalted, although it's true, everyone wants peace. There's no question about that. But you have to say that this world is not, in essence, a world of peace.
Mm-hmm.
It's a world where I would say, a world of choice and a world of testing. This is where we are placed in order to exercise the freedom of our will to choose Allah or to reject it. And that's what this world is for. And so we have to understand that to begin with, and thereby understand this world cannot be transformed into paradise by our own actions, because it was not designed to be paradise. It was designed to be a realm of testing.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me if I do not know chapter and verse of the Quran. I'm not very good at that, but there is the passage in which Allah tells the angels that He's going to place a Khalifa, representative on earth.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to create man and place man on earth. The angels say, but because they can see into the future, and they say, but He will shed blood. He will create war. Why are you doing this? Because they foresaw all the things we are suffering today. And Allah's answer was, I know something you don't know. And that's all He said. But we can go so far as to say this world is a world of testing, and that's why we're here. And a second way to look at it is, all of the religions, and certainly Islam and the Quran, have predicted that as we get closer to the hour when this world is to end, which we can never quite say when that's going to be, but we can certainly, it certainly looks like we're getting closer. Just like you say, well, I'm not getting any younger, right? So we can say the same thing about the world. And where is it that says in the Quran, by the declining day, surely mankind is in the way of loss. This is where we live. And so, we have to understand that the collective ability of mankind, humanity, to grasp the reality of God and follow the will of God is decreasing. And this is the way it's going to be. And all the religions have predicted this will happen. So here we are. So this is a particular time in which that is the reality we have to deal with, but it's also a time of great mercy. Because Allah realizes that we have this problem, that the religious collectives are not what they used to be. You don't have the power they used to have to turn people's hearts to God. So he says, if you can conceive one way or another that I am real and turn to me, I will respond. And when we go toward him walking, he comes toward us running. And that's, that is what compensates for the darkness of the times. Then if you want to just speak on the worldly level, there are powers that want to control the world. They want to control the world by stirring up conflict. And one of the easiest conflicts apparently to stir up is religions. They're doing this in order to, they want to weaken any sources of power or authority other than their own, which means they're ending up reducing this world to a mass of refugees and insurgent armies, where civil authority breaks down. This is a very conscious plan on the part of some powers. I was remembering I was at a Christian-Muslim dialogue here in my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky, and either I or Dr. Morrow, this was his debut actually for his book, came down from Indiana to be here and speak to the Christian-Muslim dialogue. And I think either he or I said something like this, and there was a Muslim who was originally from India who replied, yes, I've seen this. There will be nights where some people, forces unknown, will spread out to the community and throw dead pigs into mosques and drag dead cows into Hindu temples. And of course, the next day, there will be conflict between the Hindus and the Muslims. And this is being done on a global scale. So, in a certain sense, this is inevitable because of the quality of the times. In another sense, there are definite agents behind it. And if we do our research well enough, we can begin to expose them.
Okay. I know that in your last email, you mentioned something to me that I found really, really interesting. You talk about how certain powers have worked to weaken the very concept of religion in order to put faith under secular control. And that is something I think that we, a lot of media, or at least independent media, have really talked about over the past few months. It has become a theme. And what I would like you to tell me is that what is it about religion and faith that troubles world powers so very much? Because I really feel that there's an attempt to almost negate religion and replace it by something else. And I'm not quite sure what is this something else. But there is certainly an attempt to attack all religion. It's not just Islam, and it's Christianity, it's Judaism in a way, because I feel that the Zionist movement has betrayed, through Judaism. There's been an attack on all, at least the three main, the three big monotheist religion. So what is it that, powers find, so terrifying about belief, about religion?
Well, you look at religions, and they have the allegiance of billions of people, and it's an allegiance to a view of reality that is posed in every sense. This is when the religion is true to its own nature, and it hasn't perverted or degenerated. a view of reality that is opposed in every detail to the view of reality the powers hold and want to impose on us, which is a view first entirely materialistic. The only good is material good, money, power, or pleasure, or greed, or sex, or whatever. It's excitement, pleasure, security, and a sense of power to us in our physical beings. Whereas religion says, that's largely all of that is a barrier to understanding of the higher good, which is reality of God, and the reality of what God has sent to us and provided us in terms of guidance, so we may become closer to Him. So there's an obvious opposition between religion and the world. This is clear in Christianity, where Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," where Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was given by God also a political ministry as well as a spiritual, which is something that makes it difficult for some Christians to see him clearly. They think of him as a kind of Arab Napoleon, which I'm sure Napoleon would agree with that, but I do not agree with that. He was just as much of a spiritual teacher and a mystical teacher as he was a political leader. But in any case, even though it was Allah's will that Muhammad create a world political entity that would help people come closer to Allah, still, all throughout the Hadith and the Quran, you can see the sense of the dunya, the sense of the darkness of this world as being opposed to religion is still there, and certainly so. The powers that be, who are largely financial powers, and parenthetically, I want to say, is when we had the recent recession and economic crisis in this country, which was based upon bad mortgages and junk bonds and things like that. It was discovered, or it was asserted by someone, that there are trillions of dollars flowing through the world economy that are completely unregulated and largely invisible. Who is controlling this money? We do not quite know. But these are people who have power beyond national governments. And what they want is their kind of power over the entire world and everyone in it. And so, of course, religion is a great rival and a great barrier to this.
Okay. It actually makes sense. The other thing, because I know you're very interested in Sufism, and I found myself not drawn, but I'm very curious into Islamic mysticism. And I'm trying to understand it. I'm very careful because I do not want to, to jump, I think, too early, because I think it could be quite dangerous. So I just, for me, it's been baby step. But something that you said again in your email really struck a chord with me when you said that Allah has sent more than one revelation, and that more than one revelation can receive divine favor at the same time. So how can you? I would like you to actually explain that statement, and how it actually frames. Because this is how I understand it. That it actually comes back to perennial philosophy, and how.
Yes.
So could you explain it to me, please?
To begin with, we can't identify Sufism per se with the perennial philosophy, or with the belief that more than one revelation can be valid at the same time. Some Sufis believe that, some Sufis don't. So this is more something that one would identify with the perennial philosophy. On the other hand, certainly we have to start in terms of the Quran, which said, there was reading here ayat, say, O Muhammad, we believe in Allah, and that which was revealed unto us, and that which was revealed unto Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the tribes, and that which was vouchsafed unto Moses and Jesus and the prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between any of them, and unto him we have surrendered. So it's passages like that in the Quran which allow Muslims to accept the validity of other revelations. There are other passages which talk about the preeminence of Islam, and there's certainly a way in which that is true because it's the last revelation, and in a way it sums up all the other revelations. But whether that means the other revelations are abrogated or not is a matter of opinion, I would say. In my opinion is what I have found, or the way I judge spirituality is, does it produce saints? And there's no question, anyone who understands what a saint is, that not only Islam, but certainly Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism have produced preeminent saints, and they've done so since the coming of Islam. So they're still alive in that sense. And if you get deeper to the spiritual center of these religions, you will find two things. One, you will see that each religion is preeminent and unique in a particular aspect of what God has revealed to humanity, where it's better than any other religion, more explicit and more powerful and more effective than any other religion in that one aspect. You'll also see that every religion contains all the aspects, and that therefore the religions are all ultimately speaking about the same common reality, which is called in Islam Allah. This is what I believe, and this is what the perennial philosophers believe. The only difficulty with perennial philosophy is it does have a tendency to become a religion in itself. And when it does that, that's very unfortunate, because Allah has sent us no religion called the perennial philosophy. It's a wonderful introduction to comparative religion and to traditional mysticism and metaphysics, but you must be careful it does not become a religion in itself.
Okay. So, because now I want to talk about Sufism. Because I want to understand, because I think a lot of things have been said and written about Sufism, but it is, I think it is really difficult for people to really understand it and grasp it. And, there is something, because, I've been doing some research, and if I'm not mistaken, the very substance of Sufism is, the truth, and the meaning of Sufism is the selfless experiencing and actualization of the truth. That's the definition that I actually found on the internet. I kind of understand it, or I have an idea of what it's leading towards, but can you explain, what actualization of the truth actually means? Because it's kind of escaping me. Whenever I think I'm grasping the concept, it's really escaping me.
That's interesting. Notice how it escapes. Something in you knows what that means, and something else in you could never understand what that means.
It's like
there are the first of those is called the heart, or qalb, and the second one is called an-nafs, which is often considered as the soul. The nafs will not understand, but the heart already understands. So you sort of begin to experience it.
So what does this mean?
But I would say that the truth is Allah, al-haq.
Okay.
And to realize the truth is to realize essentially that Allah is the only real being in existence. It is said by Sufis that Allah is reality and we are metaphorical. We are signs of Allah. We are metaphors pointing to various aspects of Allah, but we are not Allah. Only Allah is Allah. There is no God but God. La ilaha illallah. And so the process in Sufism purports to bring one more closely into the presence of Allah than is usually possible by any other route. I only say usually because Allah can do whatever He will. You can't say He will only speak to those who call themselves Sufis. But there is a way one is brought more closely to the presence of Allah. And there's the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who says, it's a hadith Qudsi in which Allah Himself speaks. He says, "Heaven and earth cannot contain me, but the heart of my believing slave can contain me." So heaven and earth you can look at as the mind and the material universe. God is not an object in the material universe. God is not a conception of God. Allah is beyond both. Where He says in the Quran, I will show them my horizons, I will show them my signs on the horizons and in their own souls until they are satisfied that this is the truth. Isn't this enough for you? That I am witness over all things. So, but if Allah is fully going to occupy the heart, or let us say, if the presence of Allah in the heart is fully unveiled, your self-concept has to get out of the way. You cannot share the heart with yourself and Allah. You cannot share the heart with the world and Allah. Only Allah can occupy the heart and fully. And when He does, the world is driven from your heart, and your own sense of yourself is driven from it. And this is what's called fana, or annihilation. Your sense of who you are, your belief that which we all, in a strange way, have an unconscious belief for some reason. We are self-created. We think we have to maintain our lives every day, so we think, well, I'm the one who's responsible for my own maintenance, for my own existence. But the truth is, only Allah maintains us. He is our sustainer, and only He has created us. And we're not self-created. So all we can create is an idea of ourselves, and that idea is never accurate. So there's the experience, as the Prophet said, he says, die before you were made to die. And dying, in the sense of Sufism, is that the self-concept is annihilated. Now, you may think, well, then you become just a sort of a cloud of nothingness and you can't function. Many people think that. Well, actually, this may happen temporarily. But after annihilation, fana is baka, which is subsistence within Allah, and that simply means you understand that you are as He knows you to be, not as you know yourself to be. You exist by His consciousness of you, and His consciousness of you is a manifestation of something that is within Him. And you do not own this. You do not create this. This is all His work. And there's another hadith which refers to this. This is when Gabriel came to the Prophet, and he asked him what is ihsan, what is excellence or beauty or perfection, and the Prophet said, it is to pray to God, Allah, as if you saw Him, because even if you don't see Him, He sees you. So there's the praying to Allah as if we saw Him, which is we imagine. If we pray to Him, we imagine Him. We sort of feel, oh, there is Allah somewhere. I have a sense of Him. He's out there. I'm praying to Him. And then you get to, but even if you don't see Him, to me, that's fana. This is where you don't see anything. And after fana comes baka, which is He sees you, because you only exist by His consciousness. So this is my understanding of Sufism in a nutshell.
Okay, it is
possible to do that.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's just, it's very difficult. I mean, it's not that often that I can actually have a conversation about Sufism, and it's always very difficult when you read about it because you don't have this interaction. And for me, it is often very hard concept to kind of to grasp, and it's always a good thing to actually have someone to explain to me, because I don't pretend to to understand all of it, even though I'm very curious.
Well, no one understands all of it. It's a vast subject. And what you have, a lot of the Sufi classics were written a long time ago to people who had a much different experience, different relationship to Allah, and to Islam, and to the world, and different assumptions. And so the language is not entirely clear. And I have to say that what I am doing is a little bit dicey, as we say, that uncertain, because I am not a sheikh. A sheikh is someone whose words do have authority based upon not only his own realizations, but on his own mandate to teach. You may have realization, but you have no mandate to teach. Those are two different things. And the sheikh is the one who can lead you in reality, and concretely to the truths that other people may simply only know how to talk about.
And I have to say,
And I have to say,
I'm not a sheikh,
and most of the Sufis who write about Sufism are sheikhs, or I would have to say, believe themselves to be sheikhs. Not every person who says he's a sheikh is. I can't give you a hard and fast rule of how to tell a true sheikh from someone who's deluded. But and then Sufism, I have to say as well, is a vast, socially speaking, is very complex, because there are different Sufi orders, they have different qualities, they have different relationships to the world. Some are of the profoundest spiritual reality. Others are sort of just brute fantasies that aren't really going anywhere. And it's a time where it's uncertain as to what is valid and what is not, in so many ways, not just Sufism. We know that this world is filled with deceptions at this point, and it's very hard to see the truth on the other side of those deceptions. But I can attest that Sufism, in its essential core, is alive, and it is available.
Okay. Now, I'd like to know, because I have to say, I'm really curious about how you kind of began this this journey towards Islam and towards God. I'm always very interested in hearing people, how people, because very often when people find Islam, I think they find themselves in a lot of ways. And as a convert, for me, it is always not reassuring, but very interesting to discuss other people's journey and how they came across Islam and what called them to Islam, or at least to knowing more of Islam. So what was the process for you? How did you stumble upon it, or what did call you?
Well, I was
I'm of the generation of Americans called the baby boom, who was born after World War II. A lot of us, became spiritual seekers for one reason or another. And so I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, where a lot of such seeking was going on. So I became involved in the counterculture, which had an element of spiritual seeking in it. And it seems like every religion or form of spiritual practice, you didn't even have to travel the world. They would all come to you. The Buddhist teachers, the Hindu teachers, and the Sufi sheikhs would all just appear on your doorstep at that moment. So I went through many different trials of different practices and different beliefs, and didn't embrace any of them seriously, because I had the idea, as many of us did, that you can do it all yourself. You don't need organized religion was a bad word to us. But then the time came when I had was going through various relationship to what is called the New Age, and I was involved in the New Age peace movement. We were all praying for peace. And then I came to a moment where I said, I don't really know what I'm doing. Who knows what I'm involving myself? Because there's involved in all sorts of psychic practices and things. And I said, this can't go on. At the same time, my wife Jenny was studying had discovered the books of the perennialists. And so she I remember once I was sitting in a car with her at the San Francisco Theological Seminary in Ross, California, and I was saying, there's going to be a new revelation, the new age, the new paradigm will come. And she said, no, Islam is the last revelation. So she led me to those books, and then there was a Sufi order, and as I said to you in my email, I'm not going to mention who my Sufi orders are, because I'm doing political action that is not, doesn't relate to them. It's on my own, initiative, and so I don't want people to think that these are the people who are behind me and what I'm doing with the Covenants Initiative or anything else. But there was I joined a traditional Sufi order that was active in the San Francisco Bay Area, and sat there for nearly a quarter of a century, let's say 20 years. And then my sheikh passed away, my pir passed away, and a few years later, a friend of mine from New York said, I think there's a Sufi order you should be connected with, or I think I've looked around, I think this is a valid one, and so he helped me connect with him, and I did so. And so now I'm with my second Sufi order. So
that's basically how it happened.
That's basically how it happened.
You wrote a book that is just about to be published, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And you sent me two excerpts that I found really, I loved it. I have to say that I'm getting that book, and I would like you to talk about more about, you have this you covered the outer and inner aspects of the interaction between Sufism and the interfaith movements, peace activism, and so on. Can you explain to our readers what the book is? Because it's a bit complicated to understand. From someone that not necessarily know a lot about Sufism and all this. How can you summarize the book and the research that went into it?
Well, the research that went into it was
practice of Sufism, and of course reading at the same time.
The book is mostly
a lot of it is about the
psychology
of the nafs, which is
is translated.
You could call it ego.
It's
translated as soul,
but not soul
in the most spiritual sense usually.
And it's the psychology
it's the psychology of what in you resists
the action
of Allah and the knowledge of Allah. Which my present sheikh, however, says that mysteriously this thing in you which creates all the problems, all your fantasies and your passions and your sins and all your egotism, is mysteriously also the best thing in you. It's a mystery of Allah placed within you. But you can't simply
say
that's me, therefore I get to do whatever I want. Because that's, in a sense, identifying unconsciously with Allah. That's not a good idea. So anyway, that's part of it. The other part of it, which is drawn to a large degree from the writings, not directly, but the idea of doing this from the writings of my first sheikh, is about the states and stations, which are well-known aspects of Sufism. And a state is something,
a state of consciousness
that is sent to you by Allah. And it's
one could say that
every state of consciousness is sent by Allah, although certainly those which you recognize as coming from Him are more fruitful and more useful than simply a habitual state you may be going through. But these states are not always simply states of exaltation or insight. Sometimes they're states of, their states are named expansion, contraction, gathering together, dispersion, drunkenness, sobriety, things like that. Annihilation and subsistence, presence and absence. So these are various states whereby Allah is working upon the heart in order to bring you closer to Him. And there's a hadith which says Allah holds the heart between His two fingers and turns it however He will. So the heart turns, and the turning of these various states. When a particular state becomes actualized in you, like the state of contraction becomes actualized as repentance. You're contracted because you have been rebellious and arrogant, and God has to bring you down and say, look, I am the reality, you are not the reality. I am the authority and the truth, you are not. And make you understand that in no uncertain terms. So this is when you finally repent and say, yes, I know that becomes the state of contraction, and then this becomes part of who you are. The same with the state of expansion, where your heart expands into all the wonders of the realities that are within Allah, and that He's employed, is brought out from within Him to create the universe. They're states to begin with, but they become, God willing, inshallah, stations or parts of the character. So that's what states and stations
are
all about. And so in terms of the interfaith movement, do a little jump here.
Yes.
Yes, let me go back and start to talk about the external aspect of the relationship of Sufism to the world of the interfaith movement. And this is just basically an appendix in the book. It's not a main theme of the book, but I think it's important because the interfaith movement, at least in this country, there are very many very idealistic and very sincere people who simply want to live in peace with other religions and want to know about other religions. And this is all good. But there is a tendency that there's a trend of the powers that be wishing to control and gain power over the interfaith movement. And a lot of people who are involved in interfaith action don't quite realize this, or if someone from the U.S. government or from a large foundation says we want to help you, because we think interfaith is a good thing, they'll just say, well, it's wonderful, we're influencing these people. Well, perhaps. For an example, I mentioned this little Christian-Muslim dialogue that meets here in my hometown, and it's a fairly small group. It meets in a Presbyterian church, sometimes in the mosque, but it has had speakers from the State Department and from Homeland Security and from the FBI and from the Federal Attorney's Office. And there's so much government attention to this little grassroots organization that's just trying to bring peace between religions. And so there's a great desire to control the interfaith movement. What is unfortunate? You can see the same people who want to patronize or are patronizing the interfaith movement in the West to bring the religions together to supposedly make peace between the religions. These same people are fomenting conflict between the religions in places like Iraq and Syria. The very same people. So I consider this to be a concerted effort to, on the one hand, co-opt the religions. Everyone who says they want to be peaceful, they want to be peace between the religions. Well, great, let them do that on our terms, not on their own terms. Let us control this process of the unity of religions, or I wouldn't say unity of religions, but the tolerance and understanding between the religions. Let that be controlled by us. On the other hand, when we want to weaken both religions or all the religions, we turn them against each other and create endless conflict, and let that be under our control as well. And so these two tendencies work together in order to weaken the religions and to place them under the secular authority. You also said, who are these people? Earlier, who are these people? What are they after? Who want to control the religions? I want to say, to begin with, they're secularists who simply want power, economic power, political power. But it's impossible to replace religion without putting in its place something that is like a religion. And some have said, and I'm seeing more and more evidence of this, that there is a certain Luciferian tendency among the ruling elites of the globe. Do they worship Shaitan? I don't know. But, this would explain certain things. And I'm only going to go that far. We cannot be certain because we don't know what these people really are doing in their own, palaces, around bunkers.
There have been, not proved, but I would say, there are currents that, bear a striking resemblance to Satanism. So.
Yes,
I mean,
look at ISIS. How could ISIS be anything but Satanists? They blow up the tomb of the Prophet Yunus.
Not only that, but even people talk a lot about the Illuminati and all this, and I don't think that everything is true. But I do think, going back to Islam and how Iblis vowed to, take us down basically with him. I think that there are themes, that we find in, Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology, Babylonian mythology that, are coming back now and are very much alive.
Yes,
And
this is
Yes,
true because
this is true because
yes, I have seen that.
yes,
And
I have
think
seen
this
that,
is a
and
desire
I think this is a
upon
desire
the powers that be in the
upon
world. And I
the powers
certainly,
that be
I
in
don't
the
want to
world, and
limit
I certainly
Satanism
I don't want to
simply
limit
to
Satanism simply to
gangs like
armed
ISIS. I mean,
no,
gangs like
absolutely.
ISIS. I mean, Satanism exists,
among
among
the rich and powerful,
the rich and powerful
in all parts of the world. I believe.
in all parts of
I
the
cannot
world. I believe.
But
I
we
cannot
do see
prove,
these things,
but we do see these things themes coming
it's
back,
as if,
and
now,
it's as if Babylonian and Egyptian religions may have been real,
religions given by
true
Allah
religions given by Allah
many centuries ago.
many
But by
many
the
centuries
time
ago. But by the
Moses,
time
God
Moses,
called Moses,
God called Moses,
obviously
you know,
Egypt was
obviously
no
Egypt
longer
had no longer had divine
or at
favor,
least Allah was preparing,
or at least Allah was preparing,
through Abraham and Moses,
through Abraham and Moses, the religions that would supplant those
and so when
ancient
you bring
religions.
back the ancient
And so when you
religions,
bring
which
back the
no
ancient
longer have
religions,
God's,
which no longer have God's,
favor, but
favor,
do
but
have,
they
as it
do have, as it
stored
were,
up psychic power,
stored up psychic
how
power
powerful-
because of how powerful
they were
and
once.
how true they were
God knows
once.
how many eons ago.
God knows
This
how
is
many
very
eons
dangerous.
ago.
And
This is very dangerous. And this is
something
something that some people are doing for the purpose of gaining,
you might even say magical power.
you might even say magical
Well,
power.
I think it's always down to power anyway, whether magical, political, or else. But it is always down to power. It's this race for power.
I think seeing magical and
I think
political
seeing
and
magical
financial power coming together.
financial power
You know,
coming
and
together.
It's difficult to
and
talk like this because you
It's
can't
difficult to
prove
talk like
anything,
this
and
because you
people
can't
will say,
prove anything.
conspiracy
People will
theory.
say,
Yeah.
paranoid
But I
conspiracy
have to
theory.
say it
But
because
I
every
have
day
to
I
say
see
it because
indications
every day I
something
see
on this
indications
order
that
is
something on this order is taking place.
You mentioned a very, very interesting person in your email. I mean, not in your email, but in the excerpt that you sent me, which is, Al-Wahhab. And he is the father of Wahhabism, as we know. And you talk about how political powers are trying to, I think is, a form of hijacking of Sufism, and use Sufism to replace what we know now as Wahhabism and Salafism, because we know that it kind of a little bit blow up in people's face and turn into this aberration that we see today. And I'd like to understand how so, because you talk about how Sufism has been groomed to serve this political power, this covert agenda.
Yes. And I want to say that certainly not
And
all
I want to
Sufis
say that
have-
certainly
have,
not all Sufis
have been perverted in this manner.
have been
and not
perverted
all
in
of
this
them
manner,
have
and not all of them
accepted or sought this
have
kind of
accepted or
Okay.
sought this kind
So
of grooming.
my-
But there is definitely an attempt.
But there is definitely an attempt.
See if I can find this.
Let me
Because
see if I can find this.
the
here.
real question, because I know for a fact, I mean, I'm absolutely convinced that Abdel Wahhab was really, I mean, his intention were to pervert Islam and kind of derail it,
Yes.
and lead people to
Yes.
believe into something that was no longer Islam.
Right, and he received a lot of support
Right,
from the
and he
British.
received a lot
Exactly,
of
no,
support
because
from the
it was a
British.
form of it was a new type of warfare for me. It was trying to break into Islam from inside. Exactly, and
From its-
crumble
exact-
the
and-
Islamic
and
empire,
for-
but not just the political empire. That's what disturbs me. It's the very essence of Islam is the spiritual link in between Muslims and God.
Yes.
They try to break because
Yes.
they cannot destroy the Quran, so they have attempted to destroy our link to religion and how we understand religion to be.
They have
They have
what colonialism was able to do.
what colonialism was able to do is destroy
the Islamic intellectual
the
system and a lot
Islamic
of the
intellectual system and a lot of the Islamic intellectual traditions. So the traditional
interpretations of the Quran were not
interpretations of the
available.
Quran were not available, or
Taught them
people didn't
anymore, you know. So
weren't
Ibn
taught
Wahab
them
would come
anymore.
along
You know.
and claim
So
that
Ibn
Allah
Wahab
has a
would come
physical
along
body.
and claim that Allah has a physical body. Now,
That may sound humorous.
that
but,
may
there are
sound
some
humorous, but there are some people whose hearts are so closed that they cannot imagine that Allah could be real unless He has a physical body,
Yes.
So,
which is strange. But let me read something. This is in 2009. I found on the website of the Council for Foreign Relations, which is certainly an organ of the powers that be in the global elites, no question. But there's a writer, Ali Eteraz, who said this. It was
the subtitle of his article.
Is called State-Sponsored Sufism. He says, why are U.S. think tanks pushing for state-sponsored Islam in Pakistan? And this goes far beyond Pakistan.
It says
once certain ideas go mainstream, it often takes a pretty big flop to disprove them.